Hi, I'm Dave, founder of Halloween Year Round, and I didn't just run over a unicorn and have it dying in agony in my trunk right now. Seriously, I didn't. Why do you keep asking? Who are you calling? What? I said I didn't run over a unicorn, okay? So stop it. No, instead I just saw Death of a Unicorn, the new A24 horror comedy starring Paul Rudd, Jenna Ortega, Taya Leone, Richard E. Grant, and Will Poulter. A movie that is every bit darkly hilarious as it is brutally violent and gory. A movie that I was not prepared for this year because of how absurd its premise is, but just kind of owns that absurd premise in a horror comedy cautionary tale that I kind of loved. Let's talk about Death of a Unicorn.
That horn was rather girthsome.
I'm picking up good vibration.
As always, going to keep this as spoiler free as possible. So, we have Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega. I know the characters have names. I'm not going to bother to tell you their names because everyone just knows them by it's Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega. Okay? Sue me. So, they're traveling to Canada to this, nature reserve where these rich people that own a pharmaceutical company that Paul Rudd is a lawyer for. On the way there, they accidentally run over this animal, happens to be a unicorn, as you do, as you find in the wilderness of Canada on nature reserves. Sure, they're a national animal of Scotland, but you're actually much more likely to run into them in Canada, apparently. So, if you've seen the trailer, you kind of know where the movie goes. They discover that the unicorn horn and its blood have healing properties, and the rich family that owns the pharmaceutical company wants to exploit that for monetary gain. And things take a very, very dark turn when the other unicorns come and hunt them down, and the movie basically turns into Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Here's what I love about the movie: it never forgets that it's character driven first and foremost. Even though the first half is like a dark comedy and then the second half turns into the monster horror movie, it never forgets that the relationship between Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega as father and daughter is the sole heart of this movie. And it doesn't forget to have a heart amidst all the dark humor, all the brutal kills, all the and here's the thing: when it goes full horror movie in the second half, it holds nothing back. You've got people being impaled by unicorn horns. You've got people being trampled to death. Mind you, this is not the first horror movie to feature a unicorn impaling someone with its horn to death, but it's going to be the one you remember most because of the title. And I love how it takes the basic idea of like unicorn myths and how so many of our myths and folktales are rooted in cautionary tales that have been passed down by generations. It kind of takes that basic premise and makes it into the whole movie. The whole movie is itself one of those folk tales that, oh, remember the story of the pharmaceutical family that tried to exploit the unicorn's body and bones and blood for monetary gain? Look what happened to them. Everyone kind of gets their moment to shine, and I love how each character is funny in their own way without feeling like each other. Jenna Ortega, I know, has kind of been typecast as like the moody teenage goth girl. It's basically the same character she plays in every movie, but I feel like she gets more range here. I'm not saying that's not the character she plays here, because it very much is, but I feel like she gets more of an acting range here than she has maybe since like The Babysitter 2 or season 2 of You. That I've seen them actually allow her to do more. I love Paul Rudd, and I love how he's conflicted from the very start. He knows that these are despicable people, but he feels like he needs something from them. And again, without getting into spoilers, the sort of further down the rabbit hole he goes with being loyal to this rich family who you could insert as, any famous rich family on either political side whose, narcissism overtakes their actual charity. It's very clear that no matter what he does for them, he will never truly be one of them. And that's very much a point the movie is trying to make. Richard E. Grant is great as always. Taya Leone as the wife and mother and just she thinks she actually believes the nonsense she's spouting. But if we're talking like memorable performances from the movie, Will Poulter steals every single scene he's in. If Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd are the heart of the movie and their dynamic and relationship is the heart, Will Poulter is the humor of the movie because he's every single absurd stereotype, but never feeling like his character is a caricature. He feels like a real person that actually believes in these things and actually believes what he's spouting and actually he has a very inflated sense of self and delusions of grandeur, which is very common to a person who basically grew up rich and had everything handed to them and never had to work for anything. When you see where his character goes, it's interesting, it's funny, and even though you want to see terrible things happen to him, you can't help but laugh and enjoy every single second that he's on screen. Granted, the movie is not without issue. I think probably my biggest issue, and I feel bad bringing this up, I'm not a fan of the unicorn's design. And what I mean by that is obviously it's all CGI. When we're in the shadows in the forest at night and we're doing full predator, I think it works because you just see it in glimpses of shadows and the sort of imperfections of the CGI don't show. When we're in broad daylight and we see the full unicorn running and moving, it's obvious that it's CGI and it's closer to looking like a video game than it is actually being there in front of them. Now, I know this movie didn't have the biggest budget in the world. I know it's A24. I know I was going to say they don't have Marvel money, but even Marvel movies have terrible CGI. So I think this is just a case that given the movie's budget, the VFX team probably weren't given as much time as they should have. Probably they could only afford X amount of days of work for them, and they're like, okay, well, this is good enough for how long we worked you. So I get that, and I don't want to necessarily hold it against the movie, but it takes me out of it a little bit because I wish, if this movie had been done in the 80s, it would have all been animatronics, and I kind of wish they had. But again, I have to acknowledge that animatronics are expensive and require many more people to animate them. Just look at Chucky. So while I wish the unicorns had looked a little more real, the fact that they don't, look, the movie's called Death of a Unicorn. Going in that it is an inherently absurd premise, and the movie knows it too. The movie never forgets that it's kind of absurd, it's kind of ridiculous. That's not what its purpose is. Its purpose is to tell this folk tale, cautionary tale, like one maybe you would have heard around a campfire, but to do it as a modern movie where the first half is a very dark comedy and the second half is a brutal monster slasher movie where people are getting killed in very gory, grotesque ways. A guy's head is ripped apart. Who doesn't want to see that? Maybe if you're normal. So I really, really enjoyed Death of a Unicorn. As of now, it's definitely in it's on the list of movies that I enjoyed more so in 2025. The year is still young. I don't know that it's going to make my top 10 at the end of the year. It might make my top 10 for the first half of the year, but the next few months will tell. Uh, you know, as always, these are just my thoughts. These are just my rants. This is just my review. I would love to know what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments. What did you think of Death of a Unicorn? Did you like the first half or the second half better? Do you think the comedy and the horror worked well together? Do you wish the unicorns had looked a little more real? Because in Cabin in the Woods, it does. Like, share, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If you don't, you may end up with a unicorn coming after you. And as always, every day is Halloween.